principles. So you've got more, actually. We interrupted.
Yeah, I do have more, but this part isn't... I didn't really get into the research of it all that much, but maybe you can help me remember what went on in that video about David Icke. Because I remember that David Icke was accused of being an anti-Semite, but we both concluded that he's probably not. But on the other hand, there were tons of other conspiracy theorists, and apparently, you know, there's a documentary out there called The Protocols of Zion, where there's this guy named Levin who discusses some issues fueling anti-Semitism. Supposedly, Jews have a master plan known as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion to rule the world, and this new, relatively recent myth is that no Jews died during the September 11th, 2001 attack.
Which, by the way, I have no idea if that's an accurate statistic or not, but I find it completely irrelevant because there are, maybe there's 16% of the population that falls in the non-religious category, and around 1.6 who openly identify themselves as atheist, although many more.
1.6 total.
1.6 total percent of people in the United States openly identify themselves as atheist.
Right. But there were 3,000 people that day.
There are
1% of that would indicate that
No. That's atheists. 1.6%. The number of Jews in the United States is even less. It's less than 1%.
Are you sure?
Okay. I'm reasonably sure. Adherence.com, I think you can go and get the data.
All right, fine.
But to kind of answer your question, we're talking about religious bigotry. We're talking about hatred. What do you hate and why do you hate it? Or what do you disapprove of and why?
Yeah.
Is it the person? Are you against an individual or a person or a group of people or class of people just because they fit into that class? Right. Because if so, then you're a small-minded bigot. If you're opposed to beliefs that they have or ideas, then I have no problem with that at all. So when we're trying to figure out whether or not somebody qualifies as an anti-Semite, I tend to look at it as somebody, not somebody who's opposed to Jewish doctrine, Jewish law, Jewish culture, but opposed to Jews specifically for no other reason than because they're Jewish.
Right. I mean, you could say, for the sake of argument, I hate Barack Obama. That in itself is not a racist statement. If you go a little further and it comes out that you hate Barack Obama because he's black, right, then you're a racist. But you can hate Barack Obama and not be a racist.
Yeah, and essentially what's happening with regard to David Icke, I agree that there are some things that he said that really come close to bordering on anti-Semitism.
Yeah, no, I think the issue in this particular video was that the interviewer had heard a whole bunch of anti-Semitic stuff, and he went to David Icke and said, all these lizard people that you say rule the world, are they Jewish? And David Icke kind of goes, well, I don't know, maybe some of them are. Probably a lot of them are.
He's constructed this cabal of lizard people. Yeah. Some of them are Jewish.
I don't think you can really be racist against lizard people since they don't.
You can too.
Well,
but anyway, some of them happen to be Jewish, and because of that, and because this ties into other conspiracy theories about Zionism and the Jewish banking cabal, some of that overlaps what David Icke says. So,
and a lot of these conspiracy theorists that did appear on there were like intensely paranoid, not just about Jews, but about the charge of anti-Semitism that gets leveled against them all the time. They say, the Jewish Anti-Defamation League, which goes after examples of perceived anti-Semitism, they're part of the big world-controlling organization, and anything that starts to get close to the truth is just labeled as anti-Semitic.
However, in the case of what David Icke said, with what I saw in that documentary, that's a fair charge. The Anti-Defamation League consider him to be an anti-Semite, and I don't think they have the evidence to say that he is.
Right, there was that.
He thinks there are Jews involved in a conspiracy, but he's not opposed to all Jews. They just happen to think that it's denigrating enough that it qualifies as anti-Semitism.
Right.
This board in a Canadian town got together and had basically made up their mind before they met, which was the purpose of this. They don't like what David Icke has to say. They think he's an anti-Semite, and I'm not talking about the ADL
I don't like
anymore.
what David Icke has to say either, but I don't think he's an anti-Semite, based on that video. But I should really post that on the blog.
They got together and decided this ahead of time, And then when somebody who was trying to legitimately sit in there and say, I'm not familiar with what David Icke says, can we discuss this? They weren't open to any discussion on it.
Right.
It was, no, we don't like what he's got to say. He's an anti-Semite. We need to get rid of him. And while I don't like what David Icke has to say, apart from, garnering some amusement from it, that type of, that's the wrong type of censorship. That's the type of censorship that is unjustified, and they're making claims about somebody being, it's easy to toss around the label anti-Semite. Hell, I'm liable to get it after today's show. I'm opposed to bigotry, unjustified hatred of people for bad reasons. And that includes hatred of Jews or Muslims or blacks or homosexuals or whatever category they fit in.
Yeah. We had 2 callers on display.
We lost one and one's refreshing, so you can...
Okay, then I'm going to have to finish up, and then we'll be out of materials. So start calling, folks. I think what it really comes down to was summed up best in something that Richard Dawkins wrote right after September 11th. And I paraphrase this all the time, but I don't think I've actually read it in here. So I'm going to read a few paragraphs from this editorial that he wrote on, let's see, sometime in September 2001. He said, "My point is not that religion itself is the motivation for wars, murders, and terrorist attacks, but that religion is the principal label and the most dangerous one by which a they, as opposed to a we, can be identified at all. I am not even claiming that religion is the only label by which we identify the victims of our prejudice. There's also skin color, language, and social class. But often, as in Northern Ireland, these don't apply, and religion is the only divisive label around. Even when it is not alone, religion is nearly always an incendiary ingredient in the mix as well. And please don't trot out Hitler as a counterexample. Hitler's sub-Wagnerian ravings constitute a religion of his own foundation, and his anti-Semitism owed a lot to his never-renounced Roman Catholicism. It is not an exaggeration to say that religion is the most inflammatory enemy-labeling device in history. Who killed your father? Not the individuals you were about to kill in revenge. Those culprits themselves have vanished over the border already. The people who stole your great-grandfather's land have died of old age. You aim your vendetta at those who belong to the same religion as the original perpetrators. It wasn't Seamus who killed your brother, but it was Catholics, so Seamus deserves to die in return. Next, it was Protestants who killed Seamus, so let's go out and kill some Protestants in revenge. It was Muslims who destroyed the World Trade Center, so let's set upon the turbaned driver of a London taxi and leave him paralyzed from the neck down. The bitter hatreds that now poison the Middle East are rooted in the real or perceived wrong of the setting up of a Jewish state in an Islamic region. In view of all that the Jews have been through, it must have seemed like a fair and humane solution. Probably deep familiarity with the Old Testament had given the European and American decision-makers some sort of idea that this really was the historic homeland of the Jews, though the horrific stories of how Joshua and others conquered their Lebanese realm might have made them wonder. Even if it wasn't justifiable at the time, no doubt a good case can be made that since Israel exists now, to try to reverse the status quo would be a worse wrong. I do not intend to get into that argument, but if it had not been for religion, the very concept of a Jewish state would have had no meaning in the first place, nor would the concept of Islamic lands as something to be invaded and desecrated. In a world without religion, there would have been no crusades, no Inquisition, no anti-Semitic program. The people of the diaspora would long ago have intermarried and become indistinguishable from their host populations. No Northern Ireland troubles, no label by which to distinguish the two communities, and no sectarian schools to teach the children historic hatreds. They would simply be one community. It is a spade we have here. Let's call it a spade. The emperor has no clothes. It is time to stop the mealy-mouthed euphemisms, nationalists, loyalists, communities, ethnic groups, cultures, civilizations. Religions is the word you need. Religion is the word you are struggling hypocritically to avoid. I think that's enough.
And that was from Dawkins in 2001.
Richard Dawkins, 2001, written for the Freedom from Religion Foundation in Madison, Wisconsin. It's a speech that he gave.